Welcome back, Heat Seekers. This is your week 6 tiers of running backs that you need to be starting or considering to start, or maybe see them as sleepers. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. With that being said, RB1 overall tier is not really much of a surprise. It's the guys you love, the ones that have been producing. Dalvin Cook obviously is the caveat here. We got to see how he does. He was a game time decision against Detroit and they sat him. So we anticipate that he's back this week, but definitely keep an eye on that injury report. Between the RB1 and the top 6, even with guys that were hurt like Mixon, still got you a touchdown last week if you played him. All these guys produced pretty well except for if they weren't in or they were hurt playing hurt. Kraig, how do you feel about these top 2 tiers of running backs, and is there really anything to go over with?
No, not really. And you're seeing a lot of guys that are actually in that range if you're going to look at it year long. Of course, that's not what these are. This is for week 6, as you said. Outside of Cordarrelle Patterson, who may or may not, be a running back on your applicable site. He's up here clearly as a top 6 guy for the year. But these other names are all right up there. I think we have it pretty much how I would too. But some of it's just a matter of their offenses coming around, like the Packers, and others people had left for dead and maybe thought something wasn't going to be happening with them. The one that I do think that is interesting that is left out of here, and maybe it's just a perception that things are going to change. He's down there just below the screen line. You can see his name is Kareem Hunt. He's outscoring Chubb for the year, and it feels maybe there is a little bit of changing of the guard in these PPR leagues because he's going to be getting that volume when they're throwing the ball as opposed to Chubb, who just isn't getting that same amount. That's something to consider in the leagues that you're in. Chubb is probably closer to the end of that list, and Hunt, I think those two are interchangeable, and I like starting both of them. But I like the list overall.
Yeah, and don't forget, folks, we are starting to hit bye weeks, so these lists are going to look a little different, and guys that you would anticipate being up here, remember, this is week to week. We do this weekly for you. We do this weekly. So that being said, as we move our way down, the RB1 overall top 6 and RB1 overall has quite a few as well. But the rest of the RB1 category in our mind is Henderson from LA, Swift, Gibson, and then obviously Kareem Hunt with the PPR value. Gibson will be a fun one this week with the matchup he's got. That really could be a huge return for folks if they get him involved in the passing game heavily, or if it's just the JD McKissic show over there. We'll see how it goes. Any concerns with these 4 that are at RB1? He's muted, so obviously no.
The one that I have the most concern on, out of that is Henderson, just because I do think that they are going to split time between him and Michelle. They even did that last week. I do think Henderson is the main guy to be using there, and he does have that potential upside in a very explosive offense against a Giants team, that just isn't clicking on offense or defense the way that they would be hoping. Out of any of them that I feel questionable about, it's Henderson, but it's not like a huge, he absolutely doesn't belong there sort of situation.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right. So as we get to the RB2 category, this is where things get a little bigger. We got a lot of others, and even a familiar name that came back, Alex Collins from Seattle. Obviously, Carson is in this list as well, so we're not entirely sure. So if Carson's injury keeps him out, Alex Collins gives you RB2 upside. If Carson's healthy, they could still sprinkle in Alex Collins and make it a little bit more of a murky situation. A lot of the names on this list are all over the place. Like Josh Jacobs should be an RB1, and it'll be interesting to see if he goes back to being an RB1 with the changes that are going on, because the talent is high-end RB1 talent, but not been producing at that. When you look at this RB2 category, if CMC's back, Chuba Hubbard takes obviously a massive hit. Really falls out of there. So there's a lot more volatility in the RB2 conversation with this group. If Cook's back, Mattison then takes a really big back seat. What are you thinking about this RB2 group? Because these are a lot of hypotheticals.
Yeah, so guys that I think are going to have consistent value right in this area, Edmonds and Connor, I think they're used in different ways, but they both get used enough in that offense that having them as RB2 upside makes sense to me. Same thing with Carson and Collins. Even Pollard, now we have Zeke higher, and I think that's where he belongs, but Pollard still gets use and has value there. So I like that situation. Myles Gaskin, he had an amazing game last week, but is that a situation where you're going to see that repeat? In theory, they're saying Tua is going to come back. Are they going to have things opened up more where there will be more running room? I'm less confident about that. And some of these guys, like you said, depending on if the starter's healthy, their value gets bumped down. But even a guy like Nyheim Hines, it's all game script dependent. If they're behind big, they're going to give him some more potential opportunities. And again, we saw from Jonathan Taylor, he's getting passing game work here too, where it really feels like Hines may be just taking a back seat to him overall, where if Taylor's healthy, he's going to be the guy. Damien Harris, of course, has limited upside as he's really just the 2-down back, and they bring someone else in for the receiving work. Fournette is similar, where if Bernard is healthy, that's the receiving back if they're in a situation. And Fournette will be in the game for X amount of time, but if they just start completely blowing people out, they're not going to run him into the ground. They're going to get Ronald Jones a little work. Yeah, he's the starter, and I think we'll get the bulk of the work. You got to consider how much are they going to be using him? How much do they need to use him? Because it really feels like a lot of these guys on an offense like that, they're trying not to overuse and pound into the ground. That way they're available and closer to top form for playoffs. Mm-hmm. It's a very different situation of what we're looking at and want and what these teams in real life want.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so as we move down to the flex, Jamaal Williams has been playable. Kenneth Gainwell has been playable. Javonte has really taken a bigger role. P. Ryan, I do want to note, I'm fairly confident is on the COVID list right now. He might not be available this week. Tony Michel's had opportunity. Latavius Murray has had opportunity all over the place. So when you look at the flex plays here, is there anyone you're more confident and feel safe with putting in if you had to pick these guys for your flex?
Yeah, and part of it, what you want to be doing is looking at that matchup to see, all right, can you figure out your believed game scripting of how this is going to end up falling out? If you think that the Eagles are going to be down big and they're going to have to be throwing the ball more, I think that does open up more for a guy like Gainwell, who I like. Same thing with Bolden. New England's playing Dallas this week. If you think Dallas is going to start throwing all over and getting the score up, that's going to be more Brendan Bolden time than it probably is Damien Harris time. If you think that P. Ryan is going to be healthy, they showed last week Mixon might not be 100%, so let's give someone else a little bit of time. And Giovanni Bernard, just mentioned, unless they're down, he's not really going to come into the game where they're going to have to be thrown to him. So I think you got to figure out in your mind what do you think is going to happen in these games, and then plan on deploying these guys as you see fit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how some of these turn out. Like McKissick here could really have a strong week if they're throwing a lot and get him more involved. But on the flip side, he could also get very little usage, and it just doesn't make any sense. So it's such a flex is such an all over the place grouping this week that the safe ones for me feel like Jamaal, Javonte, maybe. It's out of that there I can build a story that some of them do great or some of them don't. So as we move down to the sleeper, again, remember, bye weeks are here. So as we get to the sleeper category, this is a whole bunch of what is going on. I do, and I don't remember exactly how you said it, but I want you to bring up the David Johnson thought or the piece that you talked about pre-show, because I think David Johnson's is the only interesting name in this conversation just because of some of his PPR value.
Yeah, so they've been using him finally. They paid DeAndre Hopkins for him basically, so they might as well use him at some point here.
Why not?
But and this is something I thought of just going through these guys and looking, and this is off of Yahoo, but 3 out of the past 4 weeks, he has been the Texans' leader in total yards on offense, and all 3 times he's been between 47 and 51 total yards. They're using him as a slot receiver more because they don't have a slot receiver that they can trust or healthy. So he has more value, and he's the better out of the 3 by far. Phillip Lindsay, I'm not touching at all right now. He'll get a couple carries. That's it. Ingram, if you think they're going to be in a low-scoring game where you're going to pound the ball more, yeah, Ingram might have that value because he is a 2-down back. David Johnson in PPR has by far the higher value out of the 3, and he's the only one I'm really considering here. Chris Evans really only has that value to me if P. Ryan sits, and it's going to be a situation where, do you think, we talked about some of these other guys, that it's going to be somewhere where they're going to be in a game where they're playing catch up to Detroit and they're going to have to be throwing the ball a lot? Stranger things in the world have happened, we'll say that. But so will that change now with the changeover and the head coach there? We'll find out. But McNichols had that huge week, and then we got a little bit of work. Is that going to change as they get more people healthy potentially? So for me, it's really David Johnson, Chris Evans if P. Ryan is out, and then I guess Kenyon Drake and McNichols if you're really desperate. But we saw last night on Monday Night Football, they have no interest in using him for whatever reason at this point. So if the team isn't going to have confidence in him, Devonta Freeman out-touched him, or at least out-snapped him by a ton. I don't know about the touches, but Freeman was trusted more out there than Tyson. So that tells you where their thoughts are as a team, and we need to take that into account as fantasy managers.
And also the value proposition here. So these sleepers aren't going to give you the same return as a number 3 or number 4 wide receiver that you slide into that flex position. So don't be afraid to start an extra wide receiver. You go with the guys that are going to give you the best opportunity for success. This group of sleepers is really in case of emergency if you need running back help more than if you're looking for somebody you can slide in your flex position, because they have such a wide variance for probabilities of what they're going to do this week. So don't worry play the best players that you've got and let them get you those wins. These guys probably aren't in that category. That being said, let us know in the comments below. Let us know what you guys are thinking, how you feel about this. Don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. Check out the other tiers videos. You can see us doing the same thing with wide receiver, quarterback, tight end. And sometimes we say things that are a little crazy. Have a little fun with it. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. We'll talk to you again soon.